Hi everybody, it's been a little while I think since I've filmed a video for this channel, so this actually almost feels kind of alien. Today I wanted to talk about why you haven't really been seeing content from me, at least not on this channel and not on my Twitch channel, as much as previously, and just why I've maybe been a little bit absent, at least compared to how I would imagine most people know me to be on the internet. I think my aim for this video is to be relatively candid and open. So this video may end up being a little bit long. I actually don't know. So let's kind of start from the beginning of the year. I spoke about it in a video before, and I've spoken about it on my stream, and I've spoken about it in my Discord server, but as a freelancer, it's kind of natural for your job to have ebbs and flows, and 2022 kicked off for me in kind of like an ebb. I just wasn't like working a ton. And as a result, I was like, okay, well, you know, this happens. I've been there before. So I'm going to go like really hard on content. I'm going to make sure I'm still really involved, you know, proving my interest, because I've always had this mindset that I have to like prove that. And I'm just gonna do all of this stuff. Now, the problem with that is it is basically a fast track into burnout. And it wouldn't be the first time I've ever been burnt out. I've burnt myself out in the past before. But the problem is like, especially if you're doing it in a space of time where you are not necessarily like working a ton outside of that, then it can end up as a negative feedback loop, because if then like a job doesn't come up or whatever, then you end up pushing yourself even more, and then it ends up becoming just this horrible like mental spiral of like, I don't know, all of this shit. Now, obviously it's not good to overwork yourself anyway, but also if you're kind of like almost setting expectations off the back of it and hoping that doing X is going to lead to Y, but if Y doesn't happen the way you want it to or whatever, then that in and of itself is not conducive to being in a particularly healthy place. As well as all of this, it has become very apparent to me, especially over the last year, that I have shown quite bad signs of symptoms that are typically associated with seasonal affective disorder. Now, I'm not a doctor, I haven't seen a doctor, I'm not going to sit here and self-diagnose, but it's a pattern that I've noticed in myself, is that I have really shown signs that would align with that, let's say. I've always been somebody who prefers to be like out in the sun. I'm a hot weather person, whatever. And I think that if you went back a year prior as well, like there would have been signs, but maybe not quite as bad. But this winter just gone, it was really awful. Like, I've never suffered from depression before, and this is probably how I would envision that experience to be. The problem is I also get that on days like, you know, it's right now we're in June. And if there is a day where the clouds are out and it's not sunny, I'm also going to feel that. But in the winter, it's like massively like exacerbated. And I don't know, it was just really bad. But the thing with this is it also means that I, as a person, struggle to stream a lot. Streaming is something that I have really tried hard at for a long time. And if you were to look at my history of streaming, what you'll oftentimes see is me really going for it for like 2 months, and then I crash and burn. I have to recover for a couple of months, and then I come back. And that is the pattern. But one of the big problems that I have with streaming that leads to me crashing and burning like that is the fact that as a person, I really struggle to be locked in a room for, you know, 5 hours or more to force myself to play video games. Like, even to just sit and film this, like, I don't like closing my curtains and blocking out sunlight. Like, I have a very clear reaction to that. And something that I started to notice in myself that I try so hard to deny because other people deny it, but I can't deny it, is that when I stream, it's so clear that I'm irritable. Like, I might start the beginning of the stream like in a super good mood and everything's PMA and happy, and I'm like, hell yeah, this is the stream where like it's gonna go super well. But at some point I always get incredibly irritable. And regardless of how much I go into a stream wanting to not be that, it always ends up happening, except on very rare occasions. And that's unfair to the people who are watching my stream. And there are a couple of things that come into that. I mean, partly it's because as much as I love competitive video games, I'm not very good at competitive video games. And there are a lot of people out there who will use that as a benchmark to judge your credibility as an analyst. And while that is something that I personally don't believe in, I definitely have found myself in positions where I get defensive or offended by people who think that, because it's very hard to stand up for yourself beyond just your work. Like, I can show people my work and be like, my work speaks for itself, but there's always going to be those people. And as much as I don't want them to get to me, in the past, there have definitely been times where they really have gotten to me. And so for then my performance in a video game to not be great has always been a personal insecurity of mine, because there are a lot of people who think that you have to be good at video games to be a good analyst, which is, there are completely different skill sets, but regardless. And then we get into conversations about things like this on my stream, and I end up getting like riled, and I get pissed off, and I get angry, and then I'm just like irritable again. And it's just, okay, cool, we're back in that same position. And just noticing that pattern in myself over and over of that irritability. I think it doesn't help the fact that I qualified for Twitch Partner in 2020, and every time I've applied for it, I've been denied. And that does make it feel a little futile at times, you know, like almost my entire career is on Twitch. Sometimes the reason I've been denied is because I've been like on a really good streak, and then I've had to go abroad for work or doing some kind of work thing. And because I haven't streamed in that like week or 2 weeks or whatever it is, then I get denied. And it's like, okay, well, what is the incentive for me to then go and put all that work back in from square one if I know I'm going to be asked to go and do work and I'm going to have to take 2 weeks off again, you know? So like, there's definitely a big part of that for me, that after 2 years of being constantly denied partnership on Twitch, like I'm sort of like, I feel like I'm trying to please a parent who's never gonna want me. But basically, just to kind of round that back to the point I was making, is I know that my mental health has been made a lot worse by the kind of grind of streaming, because of my, just as a person, my need to be outside and see the sun. I need to see the sun, and I simply cannot, I just can't like deny myself that for days at a time. It's just not good for me. One thing that I have been quite open about on the internet, I've tried not to really shove it down people's throats, because I think that it's just not the sort of thing people really care about, is the fact that I want to relocate to the US. And sometimes when I bring this up, it just kind of inspires certain conversations. People are like, why would you want to move to the US and stuff like that? But this has become such a core piece of me that I am actually very unhappy in the UK. And with that fundamental thing being such a cause of unhappiness for me and such a source of unhappiness for me, that kind of bleeds into a lot of other things. So, you know, me like sitting, streaming, blocking out the sunlight and just thinking like, yeah, I'm in this home and like this home has served me really well. I've lived here for 5 years, but like it's like I have such a strong idea of where I want to be and why I want to be there. And every day I wake up here gets a lot harder for me to, I don't know, it just gets harder for me. And it's like, it's such a very fundamental part of life, is like where you live, what your environment is. And if you get to a point where you realize your environment is not right for you anymore, that can be really difficult, and it can feel very viscous to try and just push through that. It's something that I started to consider at the beginning of 2020, and over time has just become a way more pertinent feeling for me. And I still don't know when I'll be able to act on that. And that's a very frustrating thing. And so that in and of itself is not necessarily related to streaming, but it's very much related to where my mental health is at. So there are some other points as well, and these might all seem a little bit like janky and not necessarily related, but I'm gonna bring them all around into one overall point afterwards. But going back to maybe like just general content that I make about esports, so not necessarily streaming, like maybe talking more about YouTube, is that has also become or did also become very overwhelming for me, because I was trying to have a really high content output. And the thing is, it's not just about the amount of time the content itself takes to make, it's like how long it takes to prepare that content. If you're using like clips from games and stuff, that in and of itself can take so long to put together. And it got to a point where it's like, so for example, I do this Valorant talk show with Thorin every week. I still do it. So it started to become really like obsolete to have my own one. You know, people keep asking me like, where is Bombshell? When's the next episode of Bombshell coming back? And it's like, I loved the idea of Bombshell. I thought it was an awesome idea, but it is not only not worth my time to essentially do like a repeat of what I'm doing in a better talk show format, but it's really like unhealthy for me to just be putting out content for the sake of putting out content. Ultimately, like putting all of this, everything into trying to have this insane content output felt like I wasn't achieving anything, or I wasn't getting as much out of it as was balanced with how much I was putting into it. And there were also a number of things like outside of that made me start to think about other stuff. For example, I have always been extremely stringent on the fact that I will only ever cast, or more recently be on an analyst desk. And that is something I've always been extremely strict about. And I feel like I'm at a point in my career where I am a lot more open and actually now willing, like actively wanting to diversify from that. So that doesn't mean I don't want to cast anymore. I fucking love casting. It's like, you know, it's my passion. But I've always said absolutely no hosting ever, and that's not something I agree with anymore. I've always said, you know, I only ever want to work on this game, or I only ever want to work on this game, or like I only want to stay in first-person shooter games. That's not true anymore. I have always had this method of working where I pay like complete devotion to whatever like game it is that I am in, like mainstaying in. And right now, like I'm in a position where I'm kind of not really mainstaying in anything, just because of the nature of like what broadcasts I have and haven't been on in the last half a year. And it feels wrong to act as if I'm mainstaying in something when I'm not. You know, like when I was in Rainbow Six, it made total sense for everything I did to be about Rainbow Six. When I was only doing Valorant, it made total sense for everything I was doing to be about Valorant. But for all of 2022, while I would still consider myself a Valorant talent first and foremost, I haven't, like, you know, I did VCT EMEA last year, for example. I haven't been on VCT this year. So to have a content output that like sort of pretends that I am, while that made a lot of sense to me at the start of the year, it just doesn't make that much sense to me right now. And it's been really interesting sort of changing my mind about some of these things, and changing my mind about oh my god, I just ate, about what roles I'm willing to do on broadcast and what kinds of games I would be willing to work in and stuff like that. And I think it's a big point of growth for me. Definitely. It's always been a very defining thing about my approach to my work that is now changing. And it kind of excites me as well. Like, it does excite me, the idea of, oh my God, like the world is my oyster, you know? Like I could do so many different things that I've previously closed myself off to. And what that has also meant is that I've just wanted to kind of take a step back and reevaluate where I'm focusing myself in the work that I do behind the scenes, you know, like the stuff that you guys don't see, but also like the work that I do on through my content output and stuff like that. And networking, and really trying to take stock of like, okay, what things am I willing to do or want to try? What are the things that I actually think would be quite exciting to go and whatever? And that has meant that I've needed to totally pull away and sort of set that blank canvas in front of me to look at it from that perspective. The thing is also that's really important that I've realized, and this is gonna sound so obvious, but all my workaholics out there are gonna exactly know what I mean, and that is I have reached that point where I recognize that I need to develop a work style for myself that is actually healthy, because I've never had that. And I've always loved the fact that my work style has kind of been its own talking point, you know. Throughout my whole career, people have always been like, oh, you know, like Gio works so hard, like look at all her notes, look at all this, like blah 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 blah. And I totally like, you know, got off on the fact that people really celebrated that. And I love being that guy who's known for having a good work ethic, because I do have a great work ethic, but sometimes I have taken it too far, and the only person that gets hurt in that is me. You know, it's like I'm the only person that gets harmed in that is me. And to be honest, looking back on the last few years in my career, it's very cyclical, where I've been like, you know, great fucking output, like insane, and then I've crashed. Oh shit, sorry, microphone. Then I've crashed, right? And then I recover, and then the same thing happens. It's like I can't feasibly live the rest of my life on a 2-month cycle or 4-month cycle or whatever it is, where I crash, burn, like that is not viable. And that has also meant that I've needed to just step back and be like, okay, you need to figure out what is healthy for you. And that includes lifestyle things, right? Like, for example, just to sort of tie it into an earlier point, is like, I need to see a certain amount of sun a day. I need to go outside for a certain period of time a day. I need to do that. Like, I have to do that. That is non-negotiable for me. For me to be healthy, I have to go outside, right? And it's like, I have changed my sleep schedule. I wouldn't say I've like really overhauled my diet, because I've never really had an unhealthy diet, but like there have been certain things that I have changed about my diet. I'm very strict about making time to go to the gym. Like I've always been very bad at being like, oh, but I have to work, so I'm going to skip the gym today. It's like, no, I'm not fucking skipping the gym. I'm not, because exercise, again, is one of those things that is just so monumentally, it affects so much change in your mental health. Like even just one gym session can do that. And these are things where I'm like, okay, I have to root these fundamentals and make them non-negotiable, and I can't just bulldoze over them. I mean, of course, there's always going to be periods of time where you have like a crunch time or whatever, and because of freelance work, like sometimes your schedule just goes tits up for a bit. That's fine, it happens. But it's just like ensuring that I am approaching things, like really rerouting the way that I approach work has been massive and very needed for me. And I'm still in the process of doing that, but me now compared to me 2 months ago has a much clearer idea of what that means. I think also like this is something that's been on my mind a lot the last couple of months. And I don't know why it makes me feel emotional. So we're not going to have sad girl hours. But, and I think this is something that comes with the territory of being in your mid-20s. I turned 26 this year, okay? So this is, I think, is a classic mid-20s thing. But I think over the course of especially the last year, I have learned a lot about where I want to be in, say, 10 years' time or 15 years' time. And that involves staying in broadcast. You know, I still want this job. This is my dream job. I don't think that's ever going to change. I absolutely love it more than anything in the world. But in terms of things like, for example, my realization about, or my really strong feelings about wanting to live in the US, like, because the thing that comes with that sort of decision, for example, is, right, I have no desire to ever be in a relationship in the UK. And actually, I have not entered into a relationship with someone based in the UK since the relationship I got into in 2018. So that is something I feel very strongly about. And of course, that's a big sort of life decision to make. Do I want to buy a house in the UK? No, I don't. I don't want to buy property here. I want to buy property in the US. And obviously not right now, but like at some point. So it's like, I have such a clear idea of what I want my life to be like a decade or two down the line. And that sort of changed the way I look at things. So it's like a couple of years ago, let's say like 2019, when I was really getting to the swing of like being a professional in esports, I started working professionally as a caster in like February 2019. I had the mindset of like, I will do anything to get the next gig. Like, and this is what I'm always looking at. It was like, okay, what's the work I do to get the next gig? What's the work I do to get the next gig? And to an extent, that's still true now, just because of the nature of the industry. But it's almost like the way I look at everything is in the direction of what is going to lead me to that point that I want to be in 15 years' time. And so, yes, I still want to be in broadcast. I'm still always looking for the next gig, but it's like I can't sacrifice my own health so frivolously in the same way that I have done in the last couple of years. I just can't do that. It's unsustainable. I can't build a future as a shell of a person. So I have had to step back and be like, okay, how am I going to approach this stuff? Because the way I've always done it just doesn't work anymore. Like, and that's a personal thing. And it's, you know, I think most people who've gone through like the workaholism thing have probably experienced that or are still experiencing that. But that's just the way it is. It's like, it's not sustainable. And I can't just sit and spend my whole life playing video games on Twitch. Like, I really admire the people who can. I just don't have the mental fortitude for it. What I prefer to do is I prefer to sit and research and make well-researched videos. I actually way prefer making YouTube content than I like making Twitch content. I like sitting and researching and making those things, but because you have to invest so much time into researching your topics, etc., I need to be sure that what I'm doing is actually, there is some kind of end goal with it. You know, it's like, okay, how is this going to benefit me? How is this piece of content going to blah, blah, blah. And with my desire to branch out a little bit more, it means that like, there might be different ways that I want to do that now and like different ideas. And there are tons of things that I've been thinking about and ideas and whatever that I've like had such a huge burst of inspiration over the last couple of months. And it's sort of like, okay, filtering through all that and deciding what I'm going to do, how I'm going to approach certain things. Like, what do I need to even do them? Do I need new equipment? Do I need like what? Like, you know, and yeah. And, you know, I just, the idea of sort of, I've always had, I think the TLDR here is, I've always had such a streamlined, very, very narrow view of what I want and how I'm going to do it. And I've always really overdone my own personal content in that. You know, I've always gone way too hard on it. Whereas now it's like I have a much broader view of different things that I want to try and opportunities and whatever. And that also means that there's way more things that I could be making content about and way more ideas and so many more like creative opportunities and stuff. But I need to be sure that the way that I am approaching it is healthy before I even do it. So yeah, I wanted to address all of this because I have kind of been silent and not really addressed it that much. I did address it a bit in a Discord post in my Discord channel, but that was kind of about it. And I've just been trying to think about like how much I even wanted to say. Like, I'm such an open person, so I was like, oh god, do I go like the whole way? but I feel like I need to like say it out to the world. I really hope I haven't left anything out of this. I know this video got a little bit long. It may only get 10 views, but I think it's important for me to have made it. You will still be seeing content from me. You can catch the talk show that I do with Thorin every week on his channel. I have some cool opportunities coming up, which might mean that you'll see me in more content and producing more content and being part of more content for some other channels and stuff that aren't necessarily my own. You will still see me on Twitch and stuff, maybe doing some other games as well as like just Valorant, which is what I mostly specialize in. I do also have a stream coming up this week where I'll be co-streaming VCT EMEA, so that'll feel a bit more normal, I guess. For the more astute of you, you may have noticed that I have been doing a lot more sports content as well. I don't really want to overlap sports and esports too much, so I have a second channel where I make video content about sports related things. I can put a link to that in the description box if you're interested. I also have 2 TikToks, which I've been having so much fun with just because of the no expectations, you know, I can just make content about whatever. So my main TikTok is tiktok.com/@geocasts, and then I have one about hockey, which is tiktok.com/@geocollins. So all right, I hopefully will see you guys soon, and yeah, all right, goodbye.